Сайн байцгаана уу хүн үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр орой манай де факто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Америкийн нэгдсэн улсаас Монгол улсад сууж байсан элчин сайд бидний хуучин танил найз Ла Порта оролцож байна.
Альфонс Ла Порта Монгол улс дахь Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын элчин сайд асан Альфонс Ла Порта Trans-Pacific Partners компанийн удирдах түншээр ажиллаж байна. Энэ байгууллагын шугамар Номхон далай, Европ, Латин Америкийн улс орнуудад цэргийн хээрийн сургууль явуулахад зориулан мэрэгжлийн зөвлөгөө өгдөг. Тэрээр 2003 оны намар Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын дипломат албанаас тэтгэврт гарсан бөгөөд төрийн департамент болон Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын засгийн газарт 44 жилийн турш хүчин зүтгэжээ. Ла Порта үндэсний цэргийн коллежийг төгссөн бөгөөд 1997-оос 2000 онд Монгол улсад элчин сайдаар ажиллаж байв. Мөн Индонез, Малайз, Шинэ Зеланд, Турк улсуудад ажиллаж байлаа.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to Mongolia.
Well, it's an enormous pleasure to be back in Ulaanbaatar and also on a wonderful spring day, so it's doubly nice.
Beautiful day. Ambassador, you were a part of these changes of our last almost 20 years of transition of political and economic transitions at the same time. And now you are coming back after 10 or so, 12 years, looking at the Mongolia. What was your expectation? How do you see that?
Well, I think we did have a challenging time in the late 90s, and I was here from 1997 to 2000. The election of 2000 in the political sense itself was a transition, a threshold, and itself brought a lot of change. On the other hand, I think that our outlook in the late 90s was very much as it is today. In other words, we see the same kinds of issues: the importance of strengthening governance, the importance of strengthening the private sector, the importance of spreading development, and most importantly, I think, the importance of spreading modernity to modern medicine, modern education, vastly improved services to all of the people of Mongolia.
A lot of things to increase. In particular, I think in terms of governance, you said still we are dealing even maybe deeper with corruption and not disclosing completely. Now open website, everything is there. Our government speaks good words, but in actual life, still the lot bureaucracy. And now we are dealing after 12 years now with the different bureaucrats, right, based on different economics. Mm-hmm. Compared with your years, say 10, 12 years ago, this country has a lot of money. Maybe you have seen it on the road. There were so many cars and so many good parks, mm-hmm. Park of cars.
Yes.
And yet, not everybody has the cars, or everybody has the same living standard. So of course it will not be never, but however, we have more differences in between incomes.
Well, I think that first of all, the C word, corruption word, as I call it, is important not only for Mongolians, but this is a fact of modernizing, transitioning, and future economically significant and important economies. And I see this all over Asia in my experience, because I do a great deal of traveling and work in Southeast Asia and in other parts of the region. And this is a factor that has to be dealt with by every government, and indeed the United States government has to deal with these issues. So, whether it's integrity issues in public life have affected our own Congress.
It's in the way this participatory democracy is an endless process. You keep going, keep moving with the same demand from government to government.
And there's also the generational change in terms of people.
Uh-huh.
So the new generation has to learn the rules, number one, and codes of ethics, but also has to learn to live by those. And so the systems of governance have to be strong enough to support kind of generational renewal, and every generation finding its own voice and its kind of economic moment in life.
Do you think it's the case of Mongolia?
I think it is certainly being worked on. It's to use kind of a technical words, it's aspirational. I mean, in terms of there are goals out there, there's a high bar to be gone over, and I think that there has to be a constant effort to make those values relevant to people, make the values known. And I think I have seen some polling that has been done by the Asia Foundation and other organizations that talk about individual people's experience on the very basic level with incidences of what they believe is corrupt activity or improper activity, but also it's a matter of people being informed as to what their rights are in the system.
Are we moving in that direction?
I think you have seen in the past few years some very strong people's rights movement. I think there are some taxpayers who are waving their hands and saying, hello, there's improper activity and funds or other things diverted from the public purse. But I think it is a constant process. We see this in many neighboring countries, and it is certainly not confined to Asia.
Remember 14 years or so ago, I was in charge of foreign direct investment. We have been working and we were trying to attract foreign direct investment to Mongolia. It was not an easy time. And now today we have a lot of foreign direct investment, particularly in the mining sector. Suddenly we have changed our law recently. And how do you read that? Do we still need foreign direct investment? What is your take on that, please?
Well, as I've been discussing with people here in Ulaanbaatar this week, the mining sector, as well as infrastructure to support the mining sector and the other kinds of extractive industries, kind of tends to blot out the sun and doesn't reveal the greater needs of Mongolia in terms of environmental protection, in terms of development of the rural economies, in terms of development of people's services to the people, workforce development, public health, and many other sectors. So I think that there has to be a balanced approach. And I think, in fact, I'm sure that the government of today is devoted toward, whether you use the word diversification, but also simply developing other sectors because it's the right thing to do. I think the transport infrastructure, other types of marketing to serve urban areas, not only in Ulaanbaatar but also Dakhan and other places, the need to upgrade city services are all terribly important. In the United States, I would compare it to our effort to renew a lot of our city services, whether it's water supply or sewers or roads, bridges, and so forth, and as well as railroads. But this is a constant job of government. And I think that as the incomes of Mongolians increase, and hopefully the benefits of modern economic activity and investment of all kinds takes effect, I think that you kind of, to use an old term, to lift all the boats is really the desirable job. You will never eliminate poverty in absolute terms.
Yes. How do you see, now you have been living in this town for quite some time, and now what is the most attractive changes?
Attractive changes. Well, I think there's...
Or disattractive changes, whatever.
Well, I think, first of all, the dynamism. When I travel, I see the same kind of dynamism in Hanoi. Hanoi, like Ulaanbaatar, is a city of cranes and constant construction work and massive housing projects. A great deal of inbound investment in the economy. A lot of changes to the state-owned sector and liberalization. So there are other people who are friends of Mongolia, let's say, who are undergoing the same kinds of changes. We even see it in Laos. Cambodia has its own set of challenges, and new areas like Myanmar, Burma, are being opened. So I like to kind of look at the cross-cutting issues of development and economic management and dealing with government integrity issues, and be able to look and see what's worked in one economy or in one society or in one country. What are the comparabilities, let's say, for Mongolia?
A lot to learn from each other.
There is a great deal to be learned for each other, and I just want to put in a plug here for the importance of Asian regional institutions.
Yes.
So to the extent that Mongolia has active relations with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, and participates in that organization as an observer or even a dialogue partner eventually, and participates in APEC and participates in other regional work.
Yeah, we try with APEC, but still there is a membership, so-called moratorium.
There's a moratorium, but things are changing, and eventually the pattern of free trade arrangements in the region is changing. There are some new developments in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Mongolia has to, in my view, establish its own place in those developments.
Is it being done, or how do you see that? Or we don't do
well,
anything?
I gave a talk with two of your distinguished ambassadors in New York at the end of January at the Council on Foreign Relations. And my observation is that basically we need a little more aggressiveness in pursuing those kinds of regional relationships, as well as to make Mongolia better known and the potential that Mongolia has, apart from the mining sector, to make that known to investors in Singapore, in Malaysia, and in other places. There are very competent Indonesian companies who are internationally well qualified who can contribute to development in Mongolia.
Our foreign political relations, I believe, way behind now, way behind in our economic front.
Well, I think maybe there's a little catch-up going on because there were free trade discussions with the Japanese last week.
Yes.
I think the foreign ministry is, from my few discussions with your senior people in the foreign ministry just in the last few days, indicates they understand that and that they need to move forward on a lot of these economic and trade measures. And it also is involved in getting a fair deal for Mongolia, let's be perfectly frank, with the two big neighbors.
Ambassador, you have been very active. What are you doing now exactly?
Well, I had the privilege of retiring from the U.S. government at the end of 2004. I served
almost after 44 years of career.
Right. That was a lot of years. And in fact, I'm still doing some consulting for the government with the Pacific Command located in Honolulu, Hawaii. And also I do some work in the State Department. So I'm not entirely separated 100%.
Yes.
But I still devote a lot of time, in addition to a little teaching and speaking, whether it's speaking about Mongolia or other Asian subjects, to doing some advising in the business sector, kind of maximizing, my experience here in Mongolia. And what brings me to Mongolia today is some interest that a New York investment firm has in helping to develop the non-mining parts of the economy.
Speaking about this non-mining investment, in particular from the U.S., Canada is investing way larger, I believe, in Mongolia. And then the USA, and still U.S. is regarded one of our largest third neighbor. And there is some opinion among Mongolians that we don't see enough investment and participation of U.S. firms in Mongolia. What is the reason?
Well, there are a number of reasons, but I agree with your premise. Let's put it that way. So, and I think it's important to say that there are a number of us who we rank ourselves as friends of Mongolia and people who want to see more recognition of Mongolia in the United States in many different ways. I think that the United States participation or contributions to education, healthcare in particular, and in high-tech industries, the development of knowledge industries in Mongolia is, let's say, underwhelming. And I think there is a great deal to be done in energizing with the government in Washington, but to enlist a broader range of people who can become committed to helping Mongolia develop. In the IT world, for example, I think there are some interesting and I think probably well-conceived ideas for an IT park to not necessarily consolidating the industries, but for incubating new knowledge industries, for back office work, as it's called, supporting businesses internationally, and also creative industries such as website production, also a lot of the creative artwork that is being done internationally by media and by television and movies, and also I think there's a lot to be done in developing the software industry in Mongolia.
I think, but still there, in particular, you said about the creative industry, design, graphics on computer. And I think a lot of things to explore, to really mine the mines, not to mine the minerals, in Mongolia, I believe. And I think in that sense, also from Mongolian side, we should go and also represent these opportunities. Otherwise, we are quite busy only with the mining so far.
Well, that no question about it, and
side.
That's exactly what I've been discussing with a number of people. Even not only in the IT sector, you have to go out and grab people's interest. You know, there are very large companies, and I won't name their names, but who are active in Mongolia to sell, but not to develop the country's IT capabilities. Or they're here to serve a certain segment of the telecommunications industry, but are not participating in broader development of the telecoms sector. So I think we have to begin to project the possibilities in a better way, in a more, as you did in FIFTA, but also to look for and target specific companies who can provide things that Mongolia needs. For example, there's a whole range of new technologies in cold bed methane and geothermal energy and other things. The companies in the United States are sitting on the sidelines. But the important thing are these companies are the ones who have the world's best technology.
Now, that's my concern, knowing the size of economy, potential of the U.S., and the capacity. I'm just still it's not that good feeling to see relatively very small participation compared with the potential that we can attract investment from the U.S. Though there is one good note is there is a General Electric who is supplying now certain wind farm of the best technology to the country, which is a good start, we believe. And recently we had a conference, renewable energy, at which our even president said that we have could be with this wind sources like almost reaches Kuwait or Saudi Arabia. And then yet the Asia, first of all, Japan needs renewable clean energy. What would be your take on that? How realistic would be this idea?
Well, I think, realistic in the longer term than in the shorter term. Yes, it is indeed the case. I think that we can't expect a lot of these ideas, for example, having a submarine cable that goes through China to Mongolia to connect with Japan, to supply Japan with power that's generated in Mongolia, That's an idea that, may eventually and likely will be realized, but it may take a decade or more. On the other hand, I think that there are newer technologies, better exploration and petroleum and gas development techniques that can be applied in Mongolia. So basically there has to be a strong and targeted effort to go out and grab those companies that have the capabilities. I think it requires a certain sense of strategy to focus on the few right areas to do it. It requires a sustained campaign, and it requires some technological backup to be able to make the case to significantly large and especially higher tech companies that, yes, indeed, there is viable work to be done here.
What is a role or any position of Mongolia in the U.S. foreign policy?
Well, I think I would have to candidly say that in terms of the regional framework, Mongolia's position and role is well understood. I mean, the questions relating to the management of relations with the two near neighbors, also to encourage productive economic relationships with the Republic of Korea, South Korea, or Japan, are to be urged, and I think there's a good climate of appreciation in the policy community that all of that is desirable. Now, that said, I think that there is a shortfall in terms of the United States and government in particular, but also other entities in the United States, public organizations, business organizations, and so forth, to maximizing the opportunities, recognizing and maximizing the opportunities that exist in Mongolia. And I think some of that comes from a lack of awareness. I think there are some old feelings that certainly 10, 15 years ago we used to hear a lot. Well, Mongolia is too far, too cold, too hard. And now we have to go back to,
Is it changing now?
That it has changed. And there are a degree of difficulty that's posed by geography, but Mongolia is very different than it was, let's say, 15 years ago.
Last time when Vice President Joe Biden had visited Mongolia, somehow there was an agreement, but the public watched it and could not completely understand the transparency agreement. What would that mean?
Well, the transparency agreement, in general terms, is seen as a building block or as a step toward conclusion of a broader free trade agreement. And generally, the transparency agreement enlarges somewhat on the WTO, World Trade Organization, undertakings to have open and competitive bidding systems, to publish, make documents publicly available on bidding on projects and other aspects of government management. Also instituting e-commerce and e-bidding into the processes of government procurement, and a lot of other measures, including obeying some of the, having an aggressive anti-counterfeiting campaign against IP products.
Exactly.
I think the feeling is in Washington and the trade agencies that this is kind of an essential first step to broadening the trade relationship and getting into the question of preferences, tariff reductions where they exist anymore, and eliminating other kinds of trade barriers. I think many of us, myself included, very candidly wish that the agencies responsible in Washington would push this along a lot more energetically than it has, and that requires, continuous engagement with your officials who are responsible for those things.
With that transparency agreement, ordinary Mongolians or public believes that e-governance, you said e-bidding, this sort of culture will be more present in the real terms in Mongolia, and which is not the case. E-bidding is not yet, it is they are talking about, but still we have a lot misuse of public tender process,
right,
public procurement, and still sort of very biased, very internally related.
Exactly.
Do you think will it impact on this current not good, transparent situation of the governance?
Well, I think that is exactly the objective, and I see this in other countries, and not only Mongolia, but a number of other countries in the region are struggling with the same kinds of issues. But I think, in general, the premise is correct that by making government operations more transparent, by making information more publicly available, by opening previously top secret records that do not relate to the national security of Mongolia, that contributes to creating a more open economy.
Will it have some sort of impact on U.S. aid or the aid towards Mongolia in that sense of developing transparency of the governance in this country?
I really can't say, but what I can observe about the U.S. official assistance through USAID and other agencies is, to be perfectly honest, the trend lines do not look good. Now, I can certainly make the arguments to my friends in Washington for whatever it's worth. Or
what is the reason?
I think that these programs are under financial stress in the United States.
Not because you have a big deficit, etc.?
Well, the deficit has something to do with it, but also even the small percentage that foreign affairs occupies in our national budget. Most people in the United States think, well, gee whiz, the United States spends 20% of its budget on international programs. Not true. It's more like between 1.5 and 2%.
Well, that's the basically agreement of developed countries to assist developing countries to overcome their difficulties up to 2% of their budget.
Well, and the aspirational goal is 4%.
Even 4%.
For the OECD countries.
Yeah, but good news here is also a Millennium Challenge account, which is successfully being implemented in this country. And in particular, I saw from the press, I see more good impact on the professional training. It's working on that, towards that direction in several projects. Unfortunately, the railroad had canceled somehow. What was the reason, by the way?
Well, I think it was pressure from one of the neighbors, let's be candid. And I'll say it, government officials can't say it, but I think that there was pressure because of the condominium ownership of the railways by the neighbor to the north and Mongolia, and it just made it impossible to get agreement to allow those projects to proceed. I understand, and I certainly read in the press, that there was a promise by Moscow to provide equivalent aid or equivalent funds to upgrade the railways, but that hasn't been seen yet. So I'd just leave that there.
Yeah, well, the railroad is a bottleneck in the country.
Yes.
We want to be a connecting part or piece of the Europe-Asia railway corridor, but still we yet have just one railroad. Capacity is so small that even domestic one is not enough for. That's the concern. And so, what else you think in the future, in between U.S. and Mongolia, business economic relations to grow something in the near future?
Let me say that there are some very good people in the United States government who are very much committed to improving trade and investment relations with between the United States and Mongolia, and they work very hard There are trade events, there are delegations that go, there's access to meeting technology providers, investors, and all kinds of other people. But I think that itself, while very good, is still limited. What I don't see is a broad sense of purpose among many government agencies in Washington to devote the effort to really strengthen and broaden and deepen the overall fabric of third neighbor relations. In other words, it requires a lot of oomph, a push,
yes,
if you will, and
yes,
determination. With other countries, we've seen the United States conclude strategic partnership or comprehensive partnership agreements. There's also, with the Philippines, a partnership for growth that is a systematic way of trying to identify productive areas for economic cooperation. There have been increases in external assistance, not only from USAID, but in other ways to others in the region. I think that kind of effort has to be harnessed for Mongolia, and to create a fabric and a government intention and determination to pursue the strengthening of relationships across the broad front.
You know, Mongolia today is in a sort of island of democracy, because our south neighbor is managed by one party, north neighbor is managed by two persons. And somehow what we do is, with mistakes, failures, and downs, trials, everything, somehow we keep moving. In spite of this whole changes, we are not happy with changes we do. Still it can be improved. But there is therefore sense of a real democracy. Still we have to learn. Still we have to increase the capacity of institutions in this country, which is sort of having problem due to this corruption I have been describing. It's very unfortunate to say today, but that's what it is about. And what do you think could be best towards strengthening true democracy, eliminating corruption, or at least the level we have?
Well, this year and next year, Mongolia chairs the Community of Democracies. This focuses a lot of activity on Mongolia and provides some opportunities as well to project to the broad population of Mongolia that there is a determination to safeguard and enlarge democratic practice in this country. Corruption and dealing with issues of integrity in government requires a sustained effort, not only in the legal and judicial sense, but also in terms of promoting codes of ethics, in terms of making sure that there is a proper disclosure of the high government officials of their income, including members of the Ikhral and others, and that this is an effective process. In the United States, there have been recent measures taken to expand the disclosure rules to include income and business and other relationships of spouses and family members and others. Mm-hmm. So that is one area of effort. On the judicial side, I think that it is opportune today, because of the economic factors, to look at a major program for strengthening the court system, because there has been some retrograde backward movement on that in the last decade. The 2000 decade of the 2000s started out very well for the prospects for reform, but then there was certainly a tailing off of effort, and I think that is what today certainly the Office of the President is reacting to, a widespread perception that people believe the court system does not have adequate integrity. So consequently, I think there are a number of things that is opportune to do. Number one, properly implement the the 6 laws on the judiciary that have been recently approved by Parliament, by ICRAO. Secondly, work to retrain judges, institute more effective qualifications for appointing judges. It may even include an examination system down the line. We also need to continue to do some work that the World Bank is doing to strengthen law school curriculums, to establish standards for legal education, to institute programs of continuing legal education, where lawyers not only stop when they get their law license, but they're required every year to get a certain amount of continuing education that is on their
That's
record.
what we are going now through. Hopefully this our judicial system reform that President had started will keep going, and it will not only address what we have been addressing with Mr. Inkbayar, President Inkbayar, and also with the all corruption sources. And unfortunately, there is no talk about the land speculations, and somehow they don't yet open many corruption fields. I just very curious about that, and I hopefully with this combating with that combating with corruption in all fields existing, I say from a couple of years from now, Mongolia will be a better place.
Well, that's true, but I think there are a lot of systemic improvements that are also needed along the way. Starting with more effective investigations by the police and other authorities to improve the connectivity and the relationships between the investigative agencies and the public prosecutors. Then to improve case management by the judges and make sure that written decisions are published and are openly available for the legal community and the public to see. That promotes accountability.
In your country, the whole system it is publicly available, right? Particularly the decisions of judicial.
Absolutely, yes.
And you can always go back even 100 years and you can find those cases.
Absolutely.
All that in a Congress library.
Well, but that is what is meant by creating a body of law that really underpins the society. So everybody can, we give lawyers a lot of money to go and find out those things and to determine what the proper applications of the law are.
Ambassador, this is an ongoing process, as you said. And we again talk the same issues probably we have been talking 15 years ago in this country. It shows that it's an ongoing process.
And if we live long enough, in 15 years in the future, we'll still be talking about it.
Hopefully Mongolia goes towards a better direction. At least we are optimistic. And thank you for the job you did in the country and still doing and trying to bring more foreign direct investment to this country. It's a great job. Thank you very much.
Well, Mongolia has friends, and it's a privilege to be a friend of Mongolia.
Thank you, Al. Thank you. За их баярлалаа хүн төсөгчдөө. Өнөөдөр орой манай нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын элчин сайд асан Ла Порта оролцлоо. Баярлалаа.